Hey guys, it's Bro You Whack, and surprisingly, we got a controversial topic on our hands today. Like, I haven't seen this much controversy ever since Mercy got her reworks back like 2 years ago when the community was really split on her reworks. People thought that she was too overpowered, people thought that they should have gone back to the old Mercy, so on and so forth. But seeing that the controversy surrounded the waifu of most e-girls in the Overwatch community, I really shouldn't be that surprised that the controversy is now happening for the waifu of most e-boys out there, and that is with our favorite cyborg ninja, Genji. Because what I want to talk about is the recent buffs that Genji received, if it made him OP, and if people are just overreacting because now we have a good hero back in the Overwatch meta. And isn't that what we want in Overwatch? Don't we want all heroes to be meta? No, I hate Genji and only my hero can be meta. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. That's kind of what I'm low-key seeing now with the new Genji at all levels of play. Not just low-tier play, mid-tier play, but also at the Overwatch League level of play. People have their own takes on the new Genji, and that's what I want to hear from you. Before I give my takes, my insight, and my opinions on the new Genji, I would like to know your thoughts on the new Genji. Now, they can be as biased as possible, but I want reasons. Like, I don't want just to see comments saying, I hate the new Genji, who's too powerful. Well, why is he too powerful? Is it his secondary fire? Is it his Dragon Blade? Is it because there's no counters? Like, give me insight so that I can have a better understanding, and more importantly, also so that Blizzard can have a better understanding. Because when you just say, I hate him, you gotta nerf him, you gotta do that, well, it doesn't help anybody. But for everyone that doesn't even know what the Genji controversy is, let me just catch you up to speed real quickly, because what's going on is that Genji was basically a victim of Overwatch's forever evolving nature, where he didn't change with the game. He became extremely stagnant. That means that he just kind of fell out of the meta naturally because he didn't change. Like, to give you even more insight on what I mean, before Genji got his buff spree beginning in December of 2019, the last true buff that he got was back in October of 2017. Over 2 years, Genji went unchanged, so you can kind of see why he fell out of the meta, even though he didn't become bad. Like, you can't become bad if you do not change. That's literally impossible. He just became obsolete, and that called for him to be buffed. But I think that's also where the controversy kind of starts, because, okay, why make something better that isn't supposed to be bad? And boy, did he receive some attention. He got the opposite treatment of Mei, where Mei became substantially worse over this 7-month period, where Genji became substantially better. They almost just kind of flip-flop places. All these changes just lead to Genji having a tremendous amount of DPS output. A bigger clip size means that you're not wasting time reloading. The recovery time for a secondary fire now got shortened, which means that over a long period of time, you're gonna have a lot more DPS output because you're able to fire a lot faster. His shurikens just got an outright damage buff to 30, and the spread on his secondary fire now is a lot more tighter, which means it's a lot more forgiving, which means that you're gonna hit a whole lot more shots the closer that you are. It just all leads to Genji having so much more opportunity to spit out some damage compared to other heroes. And again, it's just like the main nerfs, where if you isolate a specific nerf, and no pun intended, it's not that big of a change. But when you accumulate all the changes, it might look like a little bit too much. And I think that's what's happening with Genji here, is that, yeah, the increase of the ammo clip might not be that much. Yeah, the damage increase might not be that much. Yeah, the deflect increase might not be that much. But when you look at the bigger picture with everything right in front of you, it looks like a whole lot more much. So seeing everything take place and coming together, does that make our favorite cyborg ninja, or least favorite cyborg ninja in some people's eyes, an OP hero at the end of this buff spree? Well, for me to give my answer, I need to ask a question beforehand. When does it come to a point where you're just making a good hero? Right? Like, Genji is a good hero now. He is. And we want that. Like, whether you hate Genji or not, push your biasness to the side. We want every single hero in Overwatch to be good. And that's what happened with Genji. But even though he's good, something that a lot of people will often forget is that Genji is a high skill capped hero. Just because he received all these buffs does not mean that everybody's going to be able to pick up Genji tomorrow and climb to the next rank. You still got to be good with Genji. You still got to manage your cooldowns. You still got to be able to know every single map of where the health packs are, being able to identify what heroes to go after. There is so much that goes into Genji that, yeah, he is better. Does not mean you're going to be able to easily pick him up. So knowing all of that, do I think Genji is an overpowered hero? Absolutely. In the right hands. Here's what I mean by this. Someone that has invested hours upon hours in Genji, and just hours in Overwatch in general, is gonna make him look like an overpowered hero because they know how to manage Genji. It was once again just over time that those players just were struggling with Genji because they couldn't hang with the new heroes or just heroes that were getting buffed before him. But then those heroes got nerfed, just like with Brigitte and Mei, and he got buffed to where now they're able to hang. It's just the first couple of seasons of Overwatch all over again where, yeah, he's a really good hero, but that doesn't mean that you can easily pick him up and shred through the competition. But no matter what, there's still gonna be people that believe he's an OP hero, whether the player that is playing Genji is good with him or not, and they don't seem to realize two things. Specifically, DPS players don't seem to realize that they can easily play Genji too. Like, if he is the meta, then why don't you just play the meta? Why don't you just play the Genji so that you can either match him or beat him? And then they give the excuse that they're not able to play Genji, and then they get met with the sad reality that typically, okay, I want to emphasize that word, typically, Overwatch rewards the teams and the players that are better. If you're good in Overwatch, and if you're better than the competition, you are gonna win. Now, there are some exceptions, like being able to mesh well with your team, being able to form a GOATS-like composition, or just being able to play the meta. But right now, the meta is Genji, and you can easily play Genji too to be able to beat them. But the second thing that players do not seem to realize is that while Genji is super powerful, there are heroes that can still counter him. Numerous counters, in fact. Winston, Lucio, Mei, Zarya, McCree, Sombra. There are just so many ways to counter the Genji that if he is the best player on the enemy team, then focus your composition around beating that hero. A lot of people don't seem to remember that Overwatch is kind of like a game of counters. If they're playing a Genji, you play a Winston so you can counter the Genji. If they're playing a Winston, then you switch off a Genji to play Reaper. If they're playing a Reaper, then you switch off a Winston to play Reinhardt or something. You know, there are ways to handle the problem that's on the field, and people seem to forget that you're able to switch to fix the problem. So if you're playing a Zenyatta or an Ana, guess what? You're vulnerable to that Genji. And yes, he is a lot more powerful, but that doesn't mean you're not allowed to switch to a Lucio or a Mora where you're able to counter him. You're able to boop away the Genji, and you're able to big suck the Genji as Mora. Like, there are options at your disposal, but you want to play the Ana, you want to play the Genji, and I get that. But guess what? That player not only just picked a better counter for your hero, but is also just better than you. Because even with Ana, you're able to sleep dart him. With Zenyatta, if you're able to hit the head on that Genji, then you should be able to take him out, but he's just better. When does it come to a point that we're just wanting to stop good players from being good? And then when people say that Dragon Blade is overpowered when paired up with Grav and Nano Blade, and saying that, oh, it just takes one simple ultimate to win a team fight. First of all, there are many ultimates that go well with the Nano Booster Grav. That's the whole point of those two ultimates. And two, did those players not play the first couple of seasons of Overwatch? The quote-unquote golden days of Overwatch that so many people refer to? It's just going back to those days of combining an ultimate and you guys not having a counter for it. Again, if you want to play a Lucio to counter the Genji, yeah, you can boop him away, but you also have an ultimate that can be used to counter his Dragon Blade, and also to boop him away when he's wanting to chain dash. But there is one sound argument that I do want to talk about that I noticed in my personal time of playing Genji for like 6 to 8 hours just yesterday alone, and that is his secondary fire. Because while I do believe he is overpowered in the right hands, I do think this is something that I think was overtuned a little bit too much, because I even saw myself putting in work with Genji. And if I know anything from the comment section, I'm garbage, I'm trash. So there's no way I should be doing somewhat decent work with the brand new Genji unless he is too OP for the general mass of players, and anybody can see success if they just spam the secondary fire. Dragon Blade and his primary and his dash and his deflect, they all take skill on knowing when to time it out and when to use it. But for his secondary fire, that can just kind of be spammed at whoever. And I sometimes found myself getting lucky headshots because I just kind of spammed the secondary fire and I got a kill, which means I was able to unlock another dash, which means I was able to dash to another hero and shoot at them again. You know, in that aspect, yeah, it did seem a little bit too overpowered for just anybody to be able to succeed with Genji. And when you look at the patches again, 3 patches focused on his secondary fire. Maybe they overtuned the secondary fire a little bit too much. But but the Dragon Blade argument and the fact that, quote unquote, anybody can pick up the new Genji and do well, I don't really think are that sound of arguments when you take in consideration of where Genji was before, back in the first couple of competitive seasons. So I don't think they need to really nerf or rework anything else, but really take another look at his secondary fire and maybe just increasing the spread just a tiny bit so that it's not so forgiving. You know, I can kind of see why this is a controversy, because even with my own beliefs, believing that every single hero should be playable, yet just earlier in this video I said that you need to switch off of an Ana and Zenyatta to counter that Genji. Well, you want to play the Ana and Zenyatta, but I also say that, well, good players should be able to succeed because they are good, so that means I shouldn't want the Genji to be nerfed. It is a tough situation, but I think in this case, when just focused on the secondary fire, this needs to be tuned because anybody can succeed, where you should succeed because you are better, not just because the hero is broken. And I think this is one of those situations, but let me know what you think. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. More Overwatch videos to come, and bye.